It is 3 in the morning. The room is dark. The house is silent. And yet, inside your skull, a courtroom is in session. The judge is you. The defendant is also you. And the prosecutor? That voice that will not stop asking why you said that thing at dinner 4 years ago. Why you chose that job. Why you hesitated when you should have spoken. Why you spoke when you should have stayed quiet. This is the midnight tribunal. And if you have ever laid awake while your brain conducted an audit of every mistake since childhood, you already know its rules. There are no breaks. There is no mercy. And worst of all, there is no verdict, only endless deliberation. This is overthinking, not just worrying, not simply being careful. This is a specific pattern of mental behavior that millions of people experience every single day, and it is not a flaw in your character. It is a feature of your biology that has gone haywire in the modern world. Tonight, we are going to explore why your brain does this, what purpose it once served, and most importantly, how to finally quiet the noise. But here is what makes this different from the advice you have heard before. The solution is not to stop thinking. The solution is to understand the architecture of the anxious mind so completely that you can walk through its halls without getting lost. By the end of this, you will not just feel better. You will understand yourself in a way that changes how you move through the world. Let us begin with a simple question. What is overthinking really? Most people describe it as thinking too much, but that definition misses the point entirely. A scientist solving a complex problem thinks constantly. A writer working on a novel thinks for hours without rest. A chess player examines dozens of possible futures before making a single move. None of these are overthinking. The difference is direction. Overthinking is not about the quantity of thought. It is about the quality of movement. Imagine standing at a crossroads with 4 paths ahead of you. Healthy thinking walks down one path, notices it is wrong, returns, and tries another. Overthinking stands at the crossroads forever, examining the dirt on each path, wondering what lies beyond the horizon, creating elaborate stories about what might happen if you choose wrong, and never taking a single step. Psychologists call this rumination. The word comes from the Latin ruminare, meaning to chew the cud. Picture a cow in a field, bringing food back up from its stomach to chew again and again. That is what your brain does with problems when you ruminate. It brings them back, it chews them over, it swallows them down. And then, instead of moving forward, it brings them back again. Here is the tragic part. Rumination feels productive. When you are lying awake at 3 in the morning analyzing that conversation you had last week, it feels like you are solving something. Your brain rewards you with a small sense of control. You are doing something after all. You are thinking hard. You are taking the problem seriously. But the truth is darker than that. Studies have shown that people who ruminate do not solve their problems better than people who do not. In fact, they solve them worse. The more you think about something in circles, the less capable you become of taking meaningful action. This creates what we might call the overthinker's paradox. The more you think in order to find a solution, the further you drift from finding one. It is like trying to grab water. The harder you squeeze, the less you hold. There is a deeper layer to this paradox that most people never discover. When you overthink, you are not actually thinking about the problem at all. You are thinking about your feelings about the problem. You are thinking about what the problem means about you as a person. You are thinking about how others perceive you in relation to the problem. The actual problem sits untouched while you orbit around it in ever-widening circles. Consider a composite illustration. A man receives an email that might indicate trouble at work. A healthy response would be to read the email, determine what it is asking, and respond appropriately. But the overthinking mind does something different. It does not focus on the email. It focuses on what receiving this email means. Am I in trouble? Does my boss dislike me? Have I been performing poorly without realizing it? Should I have done something differently last month? The email itself becomes irrelevant. The emotional storm around the email consumes everything. This is why overthinking feels so exhausting, even though nothing has actually happened. You are not processing information. You are processing your own emotional reaction to the possibility of information. You are fighting shadows of shadows. So why does the brain do this? Why would evolution create a mind that traps itself in loops? The answer takes us back thousands of years, to a time when thinking harder might have actually kept you alive. Consider a case profile. Imagine an early human. Let us call her the sentinel. She lives with her tribe on the edge of a forest. Every night, predators hunt in the darkness. Every day, rival tribes compete for food. In this world, the people who survived were the ones who anticipated danger, the ones who thought about what might go wrong, the ones who examined every rustle in the grass and asked, "Is that a lion?" For the sentinel, constant vigilance was not a disorder. It was a survival strategy. Her brain evolved to scan for threats, to replay past dangers so she could recognize them again, to imagine future catastrophes so she could prepare for them. This is called the negativity bias, and every human being alive today carries it in their neural wiring. Here is the problem. The sentinel lived in a world where most threats were physical and immediate. A lion in the grass, a rival with a weapon, a storm on the horizon. Her overthinking served a purpose because the dangers were concrete. She could act on her fears. You do not live in that world. Your threats are abstract. They are emails from your boss. They are what your coworker meant by that comment. They are the state of your relationship, your career, your future, your identity. Your brain does not know the difference. It treats an unanswered text message with the same alarm systems it once reserved for predators. It replays social interactions the way it once replayed encounters with danger. It is running ancient software on modern problems, and the mismatch is what creates the torture of the modern overthinking mind. There is something else happening here that makes the situation even more complex. In the ancient world, most problems had clear endings. The lion attacked, or it did not. The rival threatened, or he retreated. The storm passed, or it destroyed. There was resolution built into the structure of daily threats. Modern problems rarely resolve. Your career anxiety does not end. Your relationship concerns do not disappear after a single conversation. Your worries about the future cannot be settled with a single action. The problems loop because the problems themselves loop. Your brain keeps trying to find the ending of a story that has no ending, and the search itself becomes a form of torture. This is why telling someone to just stop worrying never works. You cannot stop worrying about a threat that never resolves. The ancient brain keeps scanning because the all-clear signal never comes. This brings us to the next layer of understanding, the architecture of anxiety. Picture your mind as a building with many rooms. In a healthy mental state, you move freely between these rooms. There is a room for planning, a room for action, a room for rest, a room for creativity, a room for emotion. You visit each room as needed and leave when you are done. The anxious mind is different. In the anxious mind, one room has a broken door. You can enter, but you cannot leave. This room is the evaluation chamber. It is where your brain judges, analyzes, and critiques. And once you walk inside, the door locks behind you. Consider a narrative illustration. A young professional, let us call him the perfectionist, receives feedback at work. The feedback is mixed. Some praise, some criticism. A healthy mind would process this information, extract what is useful, and move on. But the perfectionist walks into the evaluation chamber, and the door locks. Now he is trapped. He replays the criticism over and over. He wonders what he could have done differently. He imagines what his boss really thinks of him. He creates elaborate scenarios in which this feedback leads to being fired, to losing his career, to disappointing everyone who ever believed in him. Meanwhile, the rooms for action and creativity sit empty. The door to rest is sealed shut. He cannot leave the evaluation chamber until he finds the answer, but there is no answer in that room. There is only more evaluation. This is the structural problem of overthinking. It is not that you think too much. It is that you think in a prison. Now, let us examine what happens in the body when this occurs. Because overthinking is not just a mental experience. It is a physical one. When your brain enters a rumination loop, it activates the same stress response that helped the sentinel survive predators. Your heart rate increases. Your breathing becomes shallow. Cortisol, the stress hormone, floods your system. Your muscles tense. Your digestion slows. Your immune system suppresses itself. All of this is preparation for a physical threat that will never arrive. The brain does not distinguish between thinking about a problem and actually facing it. To your nervous system, imagining conflict is the same as experiencing conflict. Remembering embarrassment creates the same physical shame response as the original moment. Anticipating rejection feels, in your body, exactly like being rejected. This means that every hour you spend in the evaluation chamber costs you something real. Not just time, not just energy, but actual physical health. Chronic overthinkers have higher rates of inflammation, weaker immune function, disrupted sleep, and greater risk of cardiovascular problems. Your body is paying the price for your mind's endless trial. And here is the cruelest part. The exhaustion you feel after an overthinking episode is not imagined. You have genuinely depleted your resources. You have run a marathon without leaving your chair. You have fought a battle against an enemy who exists only inside your own skull. So what is the way out? How do you escape the evaluation chamber when the door is locked from the inside? The key lies in a concept called metacognition. This is thinking about thinking. It sounds simple, but it is the most powerful tool available to the human mind. Here is how it works. Normally, when you think, you are absorbed in the content of your thoughts. You are inside them. You are identifying with them. When a thought says you are a failure, you feel like a failure. When a thought says something terrible will happen, you feel certain that it will. Metacognition creates distance. Instead of being inside the thought, you observe it from outside. You notice that you are thinking. You notice the pattern of the thought. You watch it arise and pass like a cloud moving across the sky. This shift is subtle but revolutionary. When you are inside a thought, you are helpless. The thought controls you. When you are outside a thought, watching it, you have choice. You can examine the thought. You can question it. You can decide whether to follow it or let it go. What makes this so difficult is that thoughts feel like reality. When you think someone is angry at you, you feel certain they are angry. When you imagine a catastrophe, you feel certain it will happen. The thought and the reality seem like the same thing, but they are not. A thought is just a thought, an image in the mind, a story your brain is telling. It may be true, it may be false, It may be somewhere in between, but it is always, fundamentally, just a mental event. Learning to see thoughts as thoughts rather than as reality is perhaps the most important skill a human being can develop. It does not require years of meditation, though meditation can help. It does not require special equipment or training. It simply requires practice in noticing. The next time you find yourself in an overthinking spiral, try this. Instead of trying to solve the problem you are thinking about, shift your attention to the thinking itself. Notice the sensation of thought. Notice where in your body you feel the anxiety. Notice the repetitive quality, the way the same conclusions keep arriving. You do not have to change anything. Just notice. Something strange happens when you do this. The intensity decreases, not because you have solved the problem, but because you have stepped back from it. You have created space between you and your thoughts. And in that space, freedom becomes possible. Consider a composite example. A woman lies awake at night, caught in a familiar loop. She is thinking about a decision she made years ago, wondering if it was wrong, imagining how her life might be different. Normally, she would stay in this loop for hours, feeling worse with each repetition. But tonight, something different happens. She notices the loop. She observes herself thinking. She says silently, "There it is again," the regret thought. And in that moment of observation, something shifts. She is no longer trapped inside the thought. She is watching it. She can see its edges. She can feel its pull without being dragged. This does not make the thought disappear, but it changes her relationship to the thought completely. She is no longer a prisoner. She is a witness. This is the first step out of the evaluation chamber. Not to stop thinking, but to change where you stand in relation to your thoughts. The second step involves understanding the difference between productive and unproductive thought. Not all thinking in circles is harmful. Sometimes, revisiting a problem leads to genuine insight. The question is not whether you are thinking repeatedly, but whether you are moving. Here is a simple test. Ask yourself, is this thought taking me somewhere new? If you have been thinking about the same problem for an hour and you are still examining the same aspects, you are not thinking. You are spinning. The wheel is turning, but the car is not moving. When you notice this, the instruction is not to force yourself to stop. That rarely works. Instead, the instruction is to shift the question. Overthinking often gets stuck on why questions. Why did this happen? Why did I do that? Why did they say that? These questions have no bottom. You can dig forever and never reach solid ground. The escape is to shift from why to how. How can I respond to this situation? How can I take one small step forward? How can I make tomorrow slightly better than today? These questions point toward action, and action is the antidote to rumination. This is not about toxic positivity or pretending everything is fine. It is about recognizing that understanding why rarely leads to change. Understanding how does. The third step involves accepting the fundamental uncertainty of existence. This is harder than it sounds, because the overthinking mind craves certainty above all else. Consider what happens when you replay a conversation in your head. You are trying to figure out what the other person really meant. You are trying to find the true interpretation. You are searching for certainty in a universe that refuses to provide it. Here is the truth that the overthinking mind does not want to hear. You cannot know what someone else is really thinking. You cannot predict what will happen next. You cannot control how others see you. You cannot guarantee that your decisions will lead to good outcomes. The information you seek does not exist. This is terrifying to accept, but it is also liberating, because once you stop searching for certainty, you stop being trapped by its absence. You can make decisions based on the best information available. You can act without knowing how things will turn out. You can live without solving every puzzle first. The most peaceful people are not the ones who have figured everything out. They are the ones who have made peace with not figuring everything out. They hold their plans loosely. They adapt when reality shifts. They understand that thinking harder will not give them control over an uncontrollable universe. There is a particular kind of courage required to live this way. It is not the courage of certainty, the bravery that comes from knowing you are right. It is the courage of uncertainty, the willingness to move forward even though you cannot see where the path leads. This is harder. It requires trusting yourself to handle whatever comes, rather than trying to prevent everything bad from ever happening. The overthinking mind wants to think its way to safety. It believes that if it just considers enough possibilities, examines enough angles, worries enough about potential problems, it can somehow protect itself from the pain of uncertainty. But this protection is an illusion. The pain of uncertainty cannot be avoided. It can only be transformed through acceptance. When you accept that you cannot know, something surprising happens. The need to know decreases. The grip loosens. The evaluation chamber becomes less compelling because you recognize that no amount of evaluation will give you what you are looking for. And in that recognition, a kind of peace becomes possible that thinking could never provide. Now, let us address something important. If you have read this far, there is a voice in your head that has probably been active the entire time. It is the voice that says, "This is easier said than done." That voice is right. Changing your relationship to your thoughts is not a one-time event. It is a practice. It takes time. It takes patience. It takes repetition. But here is what makes the practice worthwhile. Every time you notice yourself thinking instead of being lost in thought, you strengthen a new neural pathway. Every time you shift from why to how, you build a new habit. Every time you accept uncertainty instead of fighting it, you rewire your brain slightly. The architecture of your mind is not fixed. Neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to change itself, means that the patterns you experience today are not the patterns you must experience forever. The evaluation chamber can have its door unlocked. The prison can become a room you visit briefly and leave at will. This does not mean you will never overthink again. The tendency is wired deep, but you can change your relationship to the tendency so completely that it loses its power over you. Consider what this looks like in practice. The overthinking episode still begins. The thought still arises. But instead of being swept away for hours, you notice it within minutes. You observe it. You ask if it is taking you somewhere new. You shift from why to how. You accept that some questions have no answers. And then, gently, you step out of the evaluation chamber and into the room for action, or rest, or creativity, or whatever room serves you in that moment. This is not thought suppression. It is thought navigation. You are learning to move through your own mind the way an experienced sailor moves through changing weather. The storms still come, but you know how to sail. Let us return now to where we began. The midnight tribunal. The 3 in the morning courtroom where you stand as judge, defendant, and prosecutor all at once. What if you could change the nature of that courtroom? Not destroy it, but transform it. What if, instead of a trial, it became a conversation? Instead of judgment, it became curiosity. Instead of an endless search for a verdict, it became an acknowledgement that the case is complex, that the evidence is mixed, that the defendant, who is you, is doing their best with the information they have. This is possible. not through force, not through willpower, but through understanding. The anxious mind is not your enemy. It is a part of you that is trying desperately to keep you safe. It is running the Sentinel software in a world the Sentinel never imagined. It is doing its job too well, too often, in situations where the job is no longer needed. When you understand this, something softens. You stop fighting yourself. You start working with the mind you have instead of wishing for a different one. And here is the beautiful part. The same capacity for deep thinking that creates your suffering can also create your freedom. The mind that loops can learn to loop differently. The mind that evaluates can learn to observe. The mind that seeks certainty can learn to embrace mystery. You do not need a quieter mind. You need a wiser relationship to the mind you have. So tonight, when the courtroom convenes, try something different. Notice that it is happening. Observe the judge, the defendant, the prosecutor. Watch the proceedings without getting caught in them. And then gently remind yourself that this trial does not need a verdict, that the case has already been decided, that you are, despite everything, allowed to rest. The architecture of anxiety is intricate and ancient, but so is your capacity to understand it. You are not a prisoner of your thoughts. You are the one who can learn to walk through any room in your mind and leave whenever you choose. The midnight tribunal will always exist, but from now on, you know its nature, and that knowledge changes everything. If this exploration resonated with you, share in the comments below. What is the loop that catches you most often? What thought pattern do you find yourself returning to again and again? Sometimes, naming the loop is the first step to escaping it. And if this video helped you understand your mind a little better, consider subscribing for more journeys like this one. Thank you for spending this time exploring the architecture of your own consciousness. Until next time, may your thoughts be travelers, not prisoners.